Hello, everybody. Dr. Nadia Butawi here, and I am so excited today to have a very special guest with us, Dr. Harvey Castro. But before we get started, we would love to know if you're connecting with us live or watching the recording. You can put in the chat, live or recorded. We'd also love to know where you're connecting from. We have an audience that's across the globe, and it's always exciting to see how small the world has become. And with that, let's get started. So, today, I'm super excited to have Dr. Castro. I've been following you for so long on LinkedIn, and I was very happy that you accepted to share some of your wisdom and experience with our audience. Dr. Castro has over 20 years' experience in healthcare. He's an authority in healthcare and AI. He authored over 19 books. 8 of them are related to AI. His cheat sheets that are related to AI and healthcare have over 140,000 downloads. He is a man of many talents. He's on the board of the American Artificial Intelligence in Medicine. He's also the Chief Clinical Operation Officer at Vitel Health. He has an MD from the University of Texas Medical Center and an MBA, an executive MBA from the University of Tennessee. And the list goes on and on. But welcome to the show, Dr. Harvey.
Well, awesome to have be here. I'm honored to be here. I've been following your work as well. I'm so happy to see all the accomplishments and the great company I am in today. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, in your own words, if you are to introduce yourself to our audience, what would you say?
I think life, whatever pain points I see and feel, I jump on them, and it ends up becoming a business just because I just become so passionate in it. So I think that really summarizes all the stuff I've done in all the years.
That's awesome. And today we'll be talking about AI. I'd love to know, what was the aha moment that got you started on AI?
Yeah, I have to share this story. So I'm holding my iPhone, and it was iPhone 1,
Mm-hmm,
and that's how old I am. I was in the emergency room coding a patient,
mm-hmm,
and I never forget. I basically told the nurse, "Hey, we need to start this drip." And the nurse ran and got a textbook, started thumbing through it, found the dose, and said, "Okay, got it. Let me go get the medicine." And I look at her, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is taking too long." I go, no pun intended. I was like, "There's got to be a better way." And so I taught myself how to program. I created
mm-hmm.
an app called Ivy Meds, and it went viral around the world. And that gave me enough money to start hiring a team, and I ended up creating 30 more apps. The reason I start with that is because in November of last year, I was playing with ChatGPT, and I
Mm-hmm.
had this aha moment thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to change healthcare. This is going to help patients. This is going to help doctors. And throughout the December month of 2022, I was writing a book on AI and healthcare. My wife came into my office saying, "Hey, what are you doing here all day? And like, you're really like focused and what's going on?" And so I would tell her, and she's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't think anybody knows what ChatGPT is. By the time this book comes out, people still won't know." And I chuckled and I said, "You know what? I don't care. If one person reads my book, then I'm happy." And then fast forward, I never really thought it would become that big of a deal. And since I was the first person to write on it, I started getting calls literally from all over the world. And as a result, I've been blessed to be able to give talks around the world, lectures. And then it just became kind of like an obsession. I just fell in love with it. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to learn everything there is and put my doctor hat. I'm going to put my entrepreneur hat, and
Yeah,
then I'm going to put my AI hat and put it all together.
that is awesome. And it shows it resonates with people, with how many people, read your books, how many, you can check Dr. Harvey on Amazon and his cheat sheets. We'll share a link at the end if people, would like to check them out, how to use ChatGPT for healthcare. So with that aside, what would be, fast forward a few months down, where do you see the most potential of AI in healthcare?
That's a tough question. There's different flavors. to AI. You know, we all are kind of used to our Siri, our phone, our watch,
Mm-hmm.
our Alexa, and because we all have adopted to technology, doctors is the same way. We have some doctors that will not work at a hospital that has AI, but they don't realize it's already being used in radiology department. And then we have some other docs that really love AI and cannot wait to
Yeah.
use it and already using it. And so to answer that question, um, I think the generative AI, like ChatGPT equivalent, those kind of things, it's going to take a little bit of more time to get there, but to give you a case in point, OpenAI got in bed with Epic, which is a big electronic medical record, and Microsoft, and they already have the power of ChatGPT to create those summaries for doctors, help the electronic medical record, and so they're starting to phase that into that product. And so I see that already in use, and as a result, I think because ChatGPT, for example, has this thing called APIs. Just think of it like these magic keys that you can connect your company to it and create new products. I really think because of this last example that I gave, Epic, how to get through the HIPAA and all this stuff and how to use it. I think there's a lot of startups around the world that are just watching, saying, you know what, I can do the same product. I'm going to do it cheaper. I'm going to use an API. And I really think over the next few months, we're going to start seeing more and more adapting towards healthcare. With that said, I have to put the disclaimer. Everybody's like, "Well, we got the FDA and there's HIPAA compliance," and that is exactly why some things may not come out to market just yet.
Yeah, I think the safety of the data and the security is a big concern for a lot of people. So, what's your take on how safe is it to use AI,
Yeah,
especially in regards to patient data?
yeah, I love what you just said. So, that's another reason why I literally been out there writing the book and talking to people. I'm worried for patients that may not realize that this is just like any other tool, like they put in their social security equivalent. You wouldn't do
Hmm.
that into Google, but some people are putting in their specific information into
Yeah,
ChatGPT and, their name, last name, and this is because they don't really realize what they're doing. And unfortunately, the way this algorithm is set up, it's literally taking your information and training it
yeah,
towards their servers. And so we need you and I and the community listening, we need to teach our other patients and people the good, the bad, and the ugly, and all of us can do it, because you being here tells me that you want to learn more about the subject, and you're going to know more than the person next to you, more than likely.
exactly. I have a comment here from Jerry, who patient facing healthcare will likely be the last to adopt AI, fortunately or unfortunately.
That's a good one. You know, and I agree with that statement just because, somebody today was saying, "Are you worried about AI adoption?" And I'm like, I'm actually not worried about doctors because at the end of the day, doctors, for better or worse, they know to look at a piece of equipment, be a stethoscope, a CAT scan result, or in this particular case, AI, and say, you know what, I'm going to use this, not use this. But a patient doesn't have the medical degree or that healthcare experience. So my bigger worry is that ChatGPT is so convincing that even that someone that
Mhm.
knows medicine may get
Yeah.
fooled. Imagine someone that has 0 medicine behind them. And so that to your point, what you just said is so true. With that said, I think we will get there, and the way we'll get there is, we'll address the HIPAA that we just talked about and the data by
Hmm.
creating our own large language model for healthcare so
Yeah.
it's less likely to hallucinate, and then creating the guardrails so that if it is working with the patient and it is facing the patient, it's, I don't want to say we're going to dumb it down, but it's so specific, it's so narrow, it's so
Hmm.
within the window. We've trained every part of it that it could start facing the patient. Give you an example. If we were talking about a diabetic and they're
Yeah.
looking at different treatment plans, something to give you all the different treatment plans. But obviously, the good thing here in the States is you can't get a medicine unless you have a signature from a doctor.
Yeah.
So, in a way, you could give that information and say, hey, still talk to your provider. Here are all your options. Now we're more informed. And then now we can go to the doctor and say, look, now I understand. What do you think? And then that could be done.
That's great. We have a follow up comment here from an expert in cybersecurity, Philip Sparks, and he's very interested in AI as well. So, cyber and AI is unknown at this time, a risk waiting to be detected. So
No, and that's I agree with that, and that's why I think there's ways of using AI, for us and not give our identifiers, not give that,
mhm,
part up. You know, for example, I was just listening, to a speaker talk about, they're doing digital twins and
mhm,
how they can basically copy a whole
yes,
person's voice, persona, but
mhm,
then what about the cybersecurity? What if somebody breaks into that person's
yeah,
computer? What if it's the company
twin,
that's
mhm,
working on creating that? Now you're literally have can clone them, like,
yeah,
in their voice and everything, so what a huge risk. I mean, so yeah, I'm gonna say this is crazy. I went ahead and cloned my own voice and created my own podcast with it,
yeah,
just to be more efficient, but you're right, somebody were to hack into my computer or get
mhm,
into that, now all these podcasts with my voice could be out there, and it's
mhm.
nothing that I had said.
Yeah, and Spotify this week released the translation, the instantaneous translation of podcasters in multiple languages. So this is like an upcoming trend, and I think it has potential to help minority populations within healthcare because we know that literacy can be, a block to access to healthcare services.
I agree, this is such a hot trendy issue and we're hearing news like this week we heard about Amazon giving $4
Yes.
billion to Anthropic, and then
Hmm.
people are turning around saying, "Oh my gosh, Amazon just did this. Where are we on this issue?"
Yeah.
So it's becoming, you know, more and more evident. There's 2 companies out there that I can mention real quickly. One's called Glass Health AI. It's for doctors. It's supposed to
Hmm.
be a large language model, but it's mostly specific for reinforced learning from doctors so that the algorithm gives better output. But the reason I mention it is they just got $5 million, I want to say in the last 2 weeks. There's another one that's gonna be for patients, and it's called Hippocratic AI, and back in May, I wanna say they got about $50 million. So,
Hmm.
these things
Yeah,
are coming.
I think the race is on. Like as you mentioned, the investment of 4 billion into Anthropic, which is the maker of Claude. For the audience who are not familiar with the company, the race is on, and we know that Apple is also a big contender there, especially
Yeah,
that they have the data from the wearable devices. The watches, the earpods that can measure the resonance through the earpods and so on. So I think it's a very dynamic area for that to watch for sure.
yeah.
We have another comment here. Hold on a second. I like it to be as interactive as possible.
Yeah, it
So,
sounds good.
do you think we can use zero knowledge machine learning in the patient surveillance system?
Yeah, that's a
I,
tough one, for 2 parts. Those usually take a lot of computational power, so
mhm,
it's not so simple just to run them. They take a lot of energy. The other obviously the bigger obvious one is we need to be careful with, how we use them because of patient consent. We wanna make sure our patients understand how we're using their data. I literally just wrote an article about 2 weeks ago on Fox News, and it was talking about a lot of patients are not realizing they're giving consent and what they're giving consent to, and
mhm,
hospital systems, depending, they can use your data, and you may not want them to use that data. So that's a
yeah,
huge risk.
mhm,
But if we can get through the challenges, obviously, depending how this information is done, can also determine if it should be FDA approved. There's some
yeah,
things that, if it crosses that line, then all of a sudden now we're having to look at regulation from the FDA. We've already mentioned HIPAA and privacy rules.
yeah,
Um, in the best world, I would personally like to be able to have that system in the emergency rooms personally because
mhm,
I have had patients where I've had 2 or 3 patients come in with, let's just say, vomiting, diarrhea. Come to find out later, they were at the same restaurant and it's food poisoning that's an outbreak, and to
mhm,
have that kind of surveillance. And now with COVID and being able to say in real time, this zip code is hot for this disease. We need to be careful. That would be so nice because then I can start planning my emergency room, having more
yeah.
doctors, having more beds. I mean, there's huge advantages there. So good question.
Yeah, and to add to that, we had a research project about asthma and markers using nasal
Mm,
cells, and we were able to generate 30 markers that can have 90% accuracy who's going to get asthma in the future. those can be flagged for further follow up before they end up in the emergency room. And we know that's one of the most expensive units in a hospital system. So, yeah, there is a lot of potential to reduce the cost by moving to prevention instead of and reducing the intervention part. We have one more question here. The audience is on fire today. By Sammy. How may ChatGPT hallucination and information make it up be improved to become part of evidence-based medicine, assisting patients in making the clinical decisions along the caregivers or providers?
No, this is awesome question, and I appreciate it. Two things. I still have a touch of COVID, so if I'm a little slow to pull my trigger, it might be the COVID, and if not, I just don't
Okay,
know.
I'll take it easy.
No, but on a serious note, so two things. Number one, for the hallucination, we need one solution is we need to have doctors create their own large language models, and it has to be the right doctors for the right specialty. So let's just pretend I'm an ER doctor and I want to create a large language model in emergency medicine, then I should reinforce it. But say my colleague is a surgeon, he or she has no business in emergency medicine because it's not their field. And so that way, when that doctor that's a surgeon reinforces an ER, they may say something incorrect and reinforce the wrong thing. And so, to help in hallucinations, this is answering your question. If we have the correct model, the correct humans, which is in this particular case a doctor that's in emergency medicine, then we can create a better product. Now, I see that you might be a data scientist. On a data scientist part of it, to get around this, I always say we don't need a shotgun for the fight. All we need is our fists. And so we may not need ChatGPT. We may need Llama. And then let's create a large language model that is specific to llama, but then now we're using doctors training, reinforce it to take care of that task, to take it to yet another level to help with the issue of hallucinations, using vector data and making sure that we can look at our data and using that vector data so that way it hits the algorithm before the patient would be one way to reduce the hallucinations. But these are just kind of going a little bit into the weeds on how you would approach that problem.
That's awesome. And you mentioned, I have another question that was submitted ahead of time by somebody about AI in drug development. Let me read that question here. And so the people who were not able to join us live because of the timing, they submitted their questions. So this question is about, hold on one second here. So I wrote, thanks for your patience.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Here we go. As a drug discovery company, we are often challenged by the lack of data and imbalanced data sets. Do you see this improving or becoming more imbalanced over time, or becoming more inconsistent due to influx of new AI generated data and security?
No, that's a good question, and that actually is going to be a problem because our publications are not getting bombarded by AI, and the people that are reviewing and checking it, if they don't realize that this may be false data, then it's going into the literature, and here we are creating drugs on wrong information. I personally think synthetic data is not used enough. There's a lot of studies out there that says with a very smaller sample size of good data, you can create synthetic data to go ahead and use it. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy behind that, and just like AI today, or let me use something else, just like the iPhone from 15, 20 years ago when people were using it, they hated it. Now they're accepting it. That statement I just said about synthetic data, I think will become accepted in the future for these sample sizes and for these particular case issues that you're talking about. Good question.
That's awesome. And where do you see the large data model, segmented or fragmented data, especially in healthcare systems? I'm thinking electronic healthcare records, genomics data, and how could that be leveraged for, especially for minority populations, to find more cure, to find personalized medicine? Um,
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful question. I'm kind of stoked about. I feel like large language model is created for the genomic project to be able to take all this huge information and put it into a large language model. And as a doctor, I can say I could take that information and customize that. And so now, regardless of your race, if I have your genomes, I'm able to use that data and know how that would work. Now we'll probably need more information on that whole lock and key effect of like, I got you. Now we're talking about this disease or this drug, but in theory, this is a crazy example, but there's different types of diabetes. There's not just types 2. But if we can really get down to your genomes, and then I'm going to use an example that doesn't exist. Say if I could come up with a insulin that was better for you versus another person of a different genome, then maybe I don't need as much insulin. Maybe I need less. Maybe it's not insulin itself. Maybe it's another drug. And so this opens the door for personalized medicine. And I'm really stoked because I feel like I'm still somewhat young, and by the time I get up in my age, then I really think these drugs will be out there. The other part I want to talk about this topic because it really fascinates me, because we can use AI to create drugs and personalized medicine. Now we can cut costs by 90%. So my part of it's this. I actually wrote an article about this. If there's, let's say, 1,000 people in the world with disease X, unfortunately, drug companies are going to be like, that's only 1,000 people. If we make this drug, it may cost, $1 million or $10 million per dose, and
Yeah.
we can't even develop it. And you know this better than me. But now,
Hmm.
if I can cut that cost by 90%, man, maybe drug companies are like, you know what? Now it is feasible to create something for those 1,000 people. So, as a doctor and compassionate for people, I think, man, this is awesome to be able to help people. Because just because you have a rare disease doesn't mean you should get neglected. And unfortunately, it happens.
Exactly. And to build on that, recently, as of last year, the AlphaFold project was finished between DeepMind, Google, and the European Bioinformatics Institute. Using AI, they were able to find the 3D structure for 99.99% of proteins. And that's huge because that's a field that takes years to get the 3D structure of a protein. So I see a lot of movement around drug development because of the availability of these large genomics and omics data sets. I'll share a story that happened last week, and it's relevant to what we're doing here in terms of personalized medicine. One keynote speaker from Strata Oncology, that's what they did. They used 100,000, a large number of people, around 100,000 in cancer, to find how people respond to different drugs. And right there, after the speaker finished his keynote, somebody came over. I thought it was for a question. It was a patient who benefited from that,
Mm,
and he was completely cured because
that's
they
awesome.
had the right information and the right drug that he would respond best to. So I see a lot of also development in terms of personalized medicine. As you mentioned, not all diabetes is equal, and there's
Mhm.
huge diversity within different populations. So I'm hoping AI can help with this trend in terms of personalized drug development and treatment. Let's see, we have more questions
Yeah,
here.
I'm gonna bump a question all the way to the
Sure.
top. She,
Go
Dr.
ahead. You can. Yeah.
Noel says, "Why are doctors and actresses and writers striking against AI? Do they know something that nurses and healthcare workers, doctors don't know?" And then she asked it a couple of times. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, this is huge. And I haven't read up, but I know the strike I think has ended today or something
It
new
ended.
came out.
Yeah. Couple of.
Yeah, I don't know the exact terms and what they
Hmm.
agreed. I'd love to see the devil's in the details to see what happened. But the
Yeah.
way I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, is, um, obviously, the Hollywood has gotten a hold of working on this technology and saying, "Hey," and I have a friend of mine that's an actor. He's on TV, and he was telling me, "Yeah, when I do any gig, I have to literally sign a piece of paper saying that they can take my likeness." And I'm like, "Wow!" So then they can, and he said, "I've noticed that they're adding more cameras. So before it was a set of few, but now there's way more, so they can create that 3D
Hmm.
effect of another actor." And so, from my understanding, is Hollywood wants to have all the actors sign off. Obviously, the writer's block. It makes sense that if you feed in all the prior history of all the stories that they put in,
Hmm.
that this algorithm's going to make some good episodes. And so they want to make sure that they're compensated for their intellectual property and likeness. And I understand. And so I'm really curious what how it ended and what got compromised to see
Mm-hmm.
what, because I really think that's gonna send
Set the
big,
stage.
yeah, it's gonna make a shockwave around the world, because if they concede it to X or Y, that's, I think, gonna open the door for other things. Now, as
Mm-hmm.
an aside, my friend is not part of the Actors Guild, for all that, what's it called, the association. So big picture, um, he can work on other projects, so he doesn't have to be on strike. So it's quite interesting. I told him, I'm like, if this ends up taking a long time,
Yeah.
then those that are not part of the union are going to make more money, because they're just going to be out there working. So I'm really curious
Yeah.
how that's going to pan out.
Hmm.
Good
There's
question.
definitely the intellectual property component that still needs to be ironed out. What's generated by AI versus human versus hybrid, and I think LinkedIn is taking the lead in terms of having that hybrid system where they create content, the collab articles with AI, then seek expert advice to add to it. So I think we may see a hybrid system in terms of content or even within the healthcare space.
Yeah. And Joseph here, thank you. It says here the writer's strike is over, but the actors is not. Okay, that makes more sense to me, because I was like,
Hmm.
wow, I'm surprised the actors is still not going. Okay, that makes
Hmm.
more sense to me,
Yeah.
because if they've been copying them and whatnot, then I
Hmm.
could see that continuing. Now, I this is just, I know, not related to healthcare, and this is my
Yeah.
opinion, but I think if they've already been recording them, unfortunately, Hollywood, there's a lot of people that will sign away saying, "Hey, make me a star. I'll sign away my likelihood."
Yeah.
And I feel like, the older actors, the ones that have already made their mark, that they don't really care if they make more money or not. I personally think they're gonna stroke their ego with telling them, "Hey, sign your rights away, and 10, 100 years from now, your great great grandkids can still see you on TV." And I think they're gonna get
Hmm.
people that way. So I'm like to see how this ends up.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Parimi here had a question too, no, which is related to diagnostics. Do you think that if we develop an AI that diagnoses the disease by looking at reports, it will affect the doctors?
I personally don't. I know here's like I'm gonna be blunt here and honest. I think there's a lot of doctors that unfortunately have an issue with ego, and don't want to admit that maybe the CAT scan did a good job, maybe the blood work did a good job, and now I'm going to say maybe the AI. So in this particular
Hmm.
case, I just see it as a tool, not that it's going to dictate, not that it's going to tell me what to do. It's just going to be an
Hmm.
extra tool that I can say, okay, AI says this, the algorithm says this, but my clinical gestalt, 20 years of emergency medicine says Y. But I'm going to put all those data together and say, you know what, the best outcome is Z. And I always tell people, I think it's AI plus doctor is
Hmm.
the best, and then that is better than just doctor alone, and then doctor is better than the AI, just because we have that clinical gestalt. Now, will I be able to say the same in about 10 years or less? I don't know, but for now, I think that that statement holds.
Um, Thank you. In terms of, we know that AI trains on existing data, and there is biases out there. What's your take on how do we mitigate bias, especially in healthcare? It can affect somebody's life.
Yeah, no, this is a great question, and I love that you said that, because here's the deal. ChatGPT, I feel like it's, I hate to say it this way, but it's almost like the gold standard around the world, and people are going to it. But the problem is the data that train ChatGPT and the studies really came out of the United States, and even the language, how you speak to ChatGPT, is really trained in English. And so just translating, we all know things get lost in translation, and the token size, amount of information going back and forth will change in another language. And so that's one, already you can call it a bias. Number two, if someone, I'm just going to pick a random country, someone in Africa, let's just say, I know it's not a country, but someone out in Africa uses AI and says, "Oh, it's good for breast cancer, and here are the recommendations." Well, the studies that fed into ChatGPT never was for African population, and so we need to make sure. How do we fix that? I personally think we need to create our own LLMs. So Africa needs their own. The United States needs their other. If ChatGPT wants to do it, then they need to train it with those individuals and have those individuals reinforce it so it is more consistent with their ethics, with their culture, with their sentiment, and all their studies. Now, how to fix it with a lot of money? Well, if I was Elon Musk personally, I would literally put money into research and research those populations that are not represented in the sample size. Oh, you're on mute, Nadia.
Yeah, it's the representation. That's my take from my background in genomics. Is that most drugs that are on the market, and even other studies were done on white populations, and that data, that drug that you developed on the white population, it's not going to work as well on African Americans because of the diversity, because of the ethnic background, because of the mix in their genome. So
Yeah.
I think we need, and a lot of the drugs that are on the market that are nearing their what's called the IP cliff, meaning
Mhm.
the end of the IP coverage. So they have two choices: either extend that, or there is room for new drugs, and that's where AI, by leveraging these large data sets, has a huge potential if we put the money in the right places. We have a great question here, and it's a friend of both of ours. Question to two great AI healthcare minds. How will physician roles change in the AI in the next 3 to 5 years? Great question, Jordan.
Yeah, good job, buddy. Um, this one's a tough one because I feel like it's gonna come in 2 waves. You're gonna have to compare it's almost like apples and oranges. You're gonna have early adopters, people like me that will be ahead of the curve in the sense that I'm like, "Let me apply it, let me jump on it, let me create my own product,
Yeah.
let me do better prompt engineering, let me really extract the most I can from my patients." And then you're gonna have, some that may be just like me, but with 0 clinical experience that are gonna do the same, and then fast forward 5 years from now, you take both of us, I'm just using it for example, and there's a possibility that the younger doctor that doesn't have that clinical gestalt is going to become more dependent on AI, more thinking critically, having to use ChatGPT, whereas I can almost rely on my 20 years of experience, continuing knowledge, and then I can combine the two. And so I have a feeling that in the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to start seeing two flavors of doctors, some that are really get it and can balance the two, and some that won't know how to use it at all, and then some that use it too much and maybe dangerously doing it too much. And that's just on that one specific example, if that answers your question. Nadia, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's always about 5% tops that will be the early adopters. That's the case with innovation in general. That's the people that are ahead of the curve. They test it, and then there is what's called the chasm before it gets to the rest of the healthcare workforce. We need to consider how fragmented healthcare is, irrespective where you are within the world, especially here in the US, and how overworked and burned out the healthcare workforce is. Typically, if there is an innovation, healthcare is the last to adopt because the cost of adoption is so high in terms of training the personnel, changing the SOPs and so on. So I believe it's going to be lagging a little bit compared to other areas, but it will catch up. And I think the insurance companies are seeing the value in terms of combining large data sets. So they're looking into having a big, like nationwide type electronic health records. The same thing, the funding agencies, the NIH and the payers, which is the Center for Medicare Services, are seeing the value of having, breaking those silos. So I think if those three components, the insurance, the adoption from, lowering the barrier to training personnel without overburdening them will help a lot. In terms of the next generation doctors, that's probably beyond the 5 year period. Period is to incorporate AI in training the next generation doctors. So we're not in a situation where you're too dependent. Maybe even the assessment needs to be updated. That's my take.
No, I agree. I love this next comment. They're basically saying that ChatGPT was never intended to replace; it's just supposed to supplement. And I agree. I
Who was
think
it? So we can pull them up.
Yomega,
Omega.
and
Mhm.
I agree. I think this is growing so fast. and it's at the exponential curve, and
Mm-hmm.
um, it's and that's why I'm out there trying to teach doctors and explaining, and to Nadia, to your last point, the last question, in order to teach AI, we all must learn AI. We all must teach each other AI, um, because we all need to be aware of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so, in order for this to progress and be done the right way, we need to do it the right way. And you're right. ChatGPT wasn't. That's why I say it wasn't even intended to do this. It wasn't even intended to do math. The way it's set up, it's not supposed to do math. And if it does it incorrect, it wasn't actually intended for that. So it's quite interesting. We're using the tools wrong, but I agree.
That's awesome. Let me scroll the questions here. If you see any.
Yeah, I think another one, Dr. Noel Pang. How can we make sure nurses, healthcare workers, doctors will be included in the use of AI in the future? Now, this is great. To Nadia's point just now, we do need to change our tools. We need to educate. We need to learn how to do these
Mhm.
things. Some of the early wins is the fact that Epic is already in the electronic medical record. The
Mhm.
fact that there's so many startups looking at AI and trying to figure out what parts of the medical history or part of the medical experience can change.
Yep.
You know, I look at this keyboard right here and I think, we don't need this keyboard. When I see a patient, why can't this camera and voice recognition just transcribe my entire experience and my physical exam? And that way, I'm not looking down at the camera. I can look at the patient. I can really
Yeah.
spend time with the patient. I can look at their mannerisms, their tone, and really look at their body language. We all know that voice is not most of the conversation. There's body
Yeah.
language. There's other parts to this. And why are we not using all of it in healthcare?
That's
Think of your experience. How many times do doctors and nurses look away because their computer station is this way, but the patient is
yeah.
that way?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's so true. And in terms of that takes me to the next question. What is the potential cost saving for healthcare through implementing AI?
That's a tough one. My gestalt's like, oh, we'll save money, but spending so much time consulting with startups, one of my main things I tell them is we need to make sure that if you're going to create a product, that we keep our costs down, because guess what? If you make this $1 million idea and you make it into a $1 billion company that it costs to develop, then by the time you put it to the hospital and the consumer, it's going to cost too much that it may not be adopted. And if it does,
Mhm.
it's going to actually increase costs instead of decrease costs.
Mhm.
And so this is where I get into little murky waters, because I actually appreciate seeing not open AI, companies that are letting their code become open so that
Mhm.
anyone can take that information. And so I think that is going to lower healthcare costs, and that we're really bringing solutions. AWS, Amazon basically has this voice to text feature.
Mhm.
Microsoft has that. OpenAI has that.
Yeah.
And so my point is this: the more and more we start seeing that, the more that price is going to start going down and down and down. And then at that point, those medical applications will go down in price.
That's
And
true.
we should see. Yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to build on that to Andrew Young. He's an expert in AI from Stanford, in one lecture, and he was talking about the AI tail. So if the cost of development, if the problem is not big enough, they will justify the cost. And then not only the development part, but the cost is not only the purchase price, but the implementation, the training, how much the time does it save or the outcomes that it improves over what period of time. Though when you take all of that into consideration, then you can rule out the stuff that are not going to be ROI positive,
Yeah.
especially for healthcare systems to adopt.
Yeah, and you Omega mentioned that you can't get rid of the keyboard because of HIPAA rules. Actually, you can get rid of it. There's ways of still doing it. Let me give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
As long as that information is not leaving the cloud of the hospital, let's just pretend I installed it, and let's say you and I created our own, but we put that information on the hospital servers and kept it
Yep,
at the hospital servers. Yes, the patient always needs to give consent. You're right. But assuming that they do, then as long as the information stays there, you can still do this. And there's companies out there that are exactly doing this.
awesome. We have another question. Thanks for the answer by Philip. How is AI going to personalize healing without drugs based on upon lifestyle and epigenetics?
No, this I love this. This is a good science question. So, I was recently started reading The Blue Zone, and for those people that don't know The Blue Zone, I know I see Nadia nodding her head saying yes. Basically, think of it this way: the way, depending how we live, can determine how we
Hmm.
live longer or not. Um, let's talk about AI in this question.
Yeah.
If AI can help, like I'll just use an example that's kind of like, oh, duh, Harvey, I know this one. When I was a kid, I remember seeing a lot of people smoking left and right. It was common. And now I don't see many people actively smoking. Maybe they vape, but not as much smokers.
Hmm.
And so my point is this: our healthcare IQ has gone up. And so those diseases that we used to see 20 years ago because of healthcare, because we know maybe we need to get a mammography, we need to get this
Hmm.
test, and we got this COVID vaccine, whatever, we're able to increase our healthcare. And as a result, our quality of life goes up. As a result,
Hmm.
our lifespan goes longer. And so my point is, there just knowledge is power, literally. And so if I can let me give you a real clinical case. If I have a patient that's a diabetic, and I'm going to give you like a all geeking answer. Say I'm your
Hmm.
family practice doctor. Let's say you use ChatGPT 4. Say you have the plugin for Instacart. I can literally create a whole meal plan for you that's a ketogenic
Hmm.
diet. I go through all your allergies, the stuff you like and don't like, stuff you like, and then we'll make our whole meal plan, the recipe, everything, and then all the ingredients. I can literally dump it on your Instacart. By the time you get home from the office, your groceries are there waiting for you. I mean,
That's
that
awesome.
is a true way. Without giving you quote unquote drugs, I can take care of your healthcare.
That's awesome. Yeah, that reminds me of the Amazon when I did the advanced business analytics, that they know your data so well that they will ship you things to your front door without you ordering them, and they know 90 over 95% that you're going to keep it. So imagine doing that but for health, especially
Yeah,
where there is, like, desert places where there is no access to fresh fruits and vegetables in parks and so on. So I think that has a huge potential here. Philip here says that that's his focus in terms of epigenetics and blue zones.
nice.
Yeah, so you two, I think you should connect.
Yeah,
That's awesome. All right, let's see here. We have a comment by Dr. Noel Pond. Like Hollywood, big corporations will try to replace nurses, healthcare workers, doctors with AI in the future. They are replacing nurses with less experienced staff already. What's your comment on that?
yeah. No, this is a great question. So, um, I'm going to preface by saying the average nurse in the United States is 54 years old, with 20% of that average being 65 or older. So if you think about that, if you extrapolate that out, if those 65-year-olds would stay in another 10 years, that means that the average age would be 64, with 20% of that being over 75.
Oh,
There's no way if we have another COVID or big bang in our healthcare system that we
mm,
can continue. And so as a result, unfortunately, we're starting to see hospitals and certain businesses in healthcare looking at it and saying, you know what, I have no one applying. This is all I can get. And so it may be the quality and some places may not be ideal. And then they're all raising their prices. So when I had 8 emergency rooms that I was running, I had a really hard time keeping nurses because they were all getting these amazing contracts for COVID at all over the United States. And so my point is this: I don't see this as a replacement. I feel the opposite. I feel like if we don't do something in healthcare, if we don't help our nurses, our doctors, they're going to burn out, and then our end is going to go down even lower. And now we're going to have less nurses, and it's going to be such a strain that the few nurses that are working, they'll be like, "Screw this! This is too much work. This is
yeah.
dangerous."
Hmm.
And so here's my crazy idea, and I know I'm going to get a lot of hate mail for saying this, but I think OpenAI has a robot that's going to be coming out in the end of this year. I think that they are going to put ChatGPT 5 in the eyes of the robot, and let's just call it 4. And I think that robot is going to help in nursing care. It's going to help lift
Hmm.
patients. It's going to be an assistant. It's not going to replace a nurse. It's not going to take a doctor's job away. It's going to be an extra pair of hands that say, you know what, bring the meds, check the vitals. There's going to be so many things that robot's going to do. And here's the beauty: it's going to be learning from its eyes. and it's actually those eyes are going to have multimodality, meaning
Yeah.
it could take the video, it could take the pictures, and
Hmm.
so as the patient's walking, as it's talking, the voice itself, they'll be like, this patient has early Alzheimer's. This patient's walk is different. It's actually their right hip. This person's
Yeah.
a fall risk. There's going to be so much information that I think it's going to improve our healthcare. It's not going to take away.
Yeah. If I may add to that, with aging population also that would love to age in their homes instead of other facilities, it's going to put even more strain on the healthcare system. So, and the technology is out there in terms of not only the multimodality for the AI, but the non-wearables. We will see in the future even homes will become smart homes. You don't need to wear anything to get your vitals checked 24/7. So I think there is huge potential to even expand the lifespan with technology. Is it going to take over? I don't think so. It's more like finding a way to harmonize, with the human and the machines.
And thank you for bringing up wearables. We haven't even talked about it, and that's another world. I think it's going to be the wearables, the AI, the quantum computers, all in one, and it's going to give an amazing effect for our patients and better care.
Exactly. We should probably have like one show only for the wearable and the wireless
Right.
devices and impact on healthcare. Um, okay, so we have another question. Thanks, Philip, for your question here. A new wave is healthcare assistants younger empowered by AI, but how to transfer experience of the older nurses.
I love this question. So this is where I feel like we need our clinical gestalt experience healthcare professionals to go back and give to the algorithm and give back to the younger population.
Hmm.
Those individuals that are thinking of retiring, I would tell them don't retire yet and maybe phase into education, and all that experience is gold. It's
Yeah.
going to be hard for the AI to know. And that's where you can in itself can help the AI, train the AI, train the
Hmm.
new nurses, and I think that is going to be the future, and it's so important. We need those healthcare workers because I would hate for them to retire and leave that wisdom behind. Without leaving it behind, rather. Just leaving it out there with no one else to learn from it.
Yeah. Time flies when we're having a great time. I'd love to tap into the future a little bit. So, what does the future hold in AI in medicine and healthcare?
Unfortunately, there's less than 5,000 doctors in the entire world that have any bit of AI training. And so I think that number is going to change. The future, I honestly think, will morph into having AI in all our medical schools, in all our curriculums, in our residency programs. I haven't announced this yet, but I've accepted a position at the University of Texas, San Antonio, and it's the first AI MD dual degree program in the United States. And I'm going to be lecturing AI in their course. So I'm kind of stoked about that because I'm able to give back and help and teach. And the fact that I'm part of that curriculum, that way in the future, as the future doctors are using it, I know multiple universities around the world are going to start doing the same, but I just feel honored that I'm able to help out. And I think we need more of that so that we can have more doctors. Again, I know I sound like I'm all in on AI, and I am, but I am aware of the bad. And that's how I'm balancing the both and taking the good and then understanding the bad and making sure that I'm aware of that so I don't use that in healthcare and then able to fix that and maybe use a different solution.
That's awesome. Do you What kind of emerging trends or tech do you see in this space in the near future? That's
Oh,
gonna
that's a good one.
that
You know,
you're
I
excited about.
Yeah, I'm just really I'm a little geeky on the robot stuff. I really think that's gonna help. I went to a recent conference, this was in over the summer, and I saw this camera that just looking at it after like a minute, it told you your age, your hemoglobin A1C, your blood pressure, and then I started thinking about this multimodality and robots, and I thought, "Oh my god, you put this all together." And I know people are like, "Oh god, you're gonna lose jobs." I'm like, "No, you're gonna be able to help our healthcare professionals." And, you know, I personally would love to have a robot. I know patients are like, "Oh, that's weird," but next to me, and then as we're talking to the patient, the robot can say, "Oh yeah, here's the hemoglobin A1C, here's this, here's what's going on with your patient," and give me a whole data dump and be able to say, "Okay, now I can help the patient and take it to another level," instead of me saying, "You know what? I need your blood work. can we send you to the lab and I'll get the blood work and let's schedule another appointment in 2 weeks and then we'll go over that. Like there's just so much more I can do right away. So I'm really stoked about this.
That's awesome. I'm very excited about the multimodality too. I really believe it will. You know how to use these technologies. It's going to amplify your creativity. So, and you know, in our lifetime, we'll come across very few chances where the gap between the expert and the early adopters is the smallest, and we are living that. And how long will it last? Maybe a few months. So take advantage of that. Learn how to use it and be creative with it. Don't be afraid.
Yeah, I
My
agree.
next question: if an entrepreneur or a healthcare professional wants to stay up to date in this very rapidly evolving landscape, AI in healthcare, what's your advice? How would they go about it?
There's so many associations out there. I'm biased. I'm a guest lecturer at the
Hmm.
American oh my God, American Medical Association of Medical
Hmm.
Intelligence. Oh my God, I butchered it. I put it on the link.
Yep.
It's that COVID kicking in. But I think just being part of a society of AI and learning, there's different certificates out there, or even if you don't want to pay for a certificate, there's tons of information. And
Yeah.
that's one. Obviously, I'm biased. I'm going to say follow me because I'm constantly posting. I'm going to do a selfless plug-in and say I have an AI in healthcare course. There it is. Thank you for posting and
Hmm.
for being on here. Just type in Harvey as the coupon code and you get 15% off. And I made it so dirt cheap. It's over 65 lectures and it's $89. So
That's
it's
a
got
steal.
everything in there.
Yeah.
So I
And
really think that's a steal. I wasn't trying to kill
yeah.
it in the price zone. I was just trying to make sure I got it out there. So
Hmm.
obviously, and if you don't want to do either of those, just be active. And I love these questions. They're thought provoking, and that's the only way we're all going to improve. So good job.
Exactly. Yeah. In terms that, find a tribe, who are not necessarily in healthcare. It could be in different fields that you can learn from. Um, so an example is David Wilson. He has an everyday AI. I'm a big fan, where you can learn within micro learning. I'm also running an AI in healthcare mastery for business. So again, I'm an early adopter, and I think business owners and professionals can amplify their impact if they use the right tools. So again, we are the drivers. We're not followers of the AI, but you can use it to get more done in less time.
I love that. And I'm just going to amplify that by saying we need healthcare professionals in healthcare to lead the software, to teach the algorithms, to
Mhm.
show OpenAI, Microsoft how to use these tools, and
Mhm.
explain the HIPAA and things that we don't want, so that we're shaping the future, not
Yeah.
business owner with looking at a spreadsheet pushing it, but doctors and
Mhm.
compassionate nurses are behind the AI and working with the AI to get a better output.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, again, as I mentioned, for me, I'm running a very small, exclusive AI in business mastery because I think it can help so many to get more impact. I'm gonna put Dr. Castro's um, AI in healthcare course, which I think is a steal. So let's go over if there is any other burning questions. I'd love to prioritize our audience here. If you see any questions I missed, please bring them up. Yeah.
Um, let's see.
So
I think.
yeah,
Go ahead.
Parimi here. Where can I learn about it? You can check out Dr. Harvey's course. It's very affordable, and yeah, follow us both. We create a lot of content related to AI. Okay, awesome. We have a question here. Then the AI scanner would tell the patient. I think this is a follow up. Let's start from the beginning. At an ER, it would be great to have a person walk into a scanner, pull all the bio data, scan the drives, LIC, credit card, and insurance card if they have it. There's the follow up. Then the AI scanner could tell the patient if they don't need an ER and go to the urgent care instead.
I'm gonna mention this. There's a couple of business models that I've seen that have ER and an urgent care at the same location. And so what happens is they have a triage right in the middle, and then
Mhm.
someone sees you, and then that person determines you go to urgent care, ER, and it's in the exact same physical place. They just separated by a firewall. But as you, what your concern is, like you walk right into it. So I think that model pseudo exists already.
Yeah.
But I see your point. I think eventually we could get to that. I know at Parkland Medical in Dallas, Texas, at one point they did play with having kiosks that you would kiosk, and then it would tell you, okay, based on your symptoms, go to this part or that part, and they was basically telling you go to the urgent care or going to the ER. I know as an ER board certified doctor, I've had patients miss triage where I was maybe working and then they were not supposed to be there. They really need to be in the emergency room because literally they were going to die. And so, unfortunately, even humans make mistakes. So I can see that being so delicate that they would still make sure that it would be both the AI and the doctor.
That's awesome. There is a follow-up comment here. That could be a potential EMTALA violation, though. And for the audience, the EMTALA law is that if anybody presents themselves to an ER, they should not be turned healthcare services, irrespective of their ability to pay.
Yeah, I agree. You can't ask for patients' information, especially their insurance. You can triage them. The other parts of that, if you were looking at it as you were being told to not go to the emergency room, as long as you're getting a medical screening exam, you can
Mm-hmm.
still do the triage and call it your medical screening exam, as long as it is a true medical screening exam, and then
Yeah.
send them to the urgent care. Because
Mm-hmm.
technically, and that just from for those out there that were curious, if you see a nurse practitioner do it and not a doctor, technically that's still valid because it's still a person that's certified to be able to do that.
Exactly. And I know of healthcare systems, they do the triage by phone. So when you call, they will go over, they have some questions, then they will tell you would you go to. They won't ask about the ability to pay, but they will tell you go to the urgent care or to another medical facility. Um, we have some comments here. Great to be here, Harvey and Nadia. Need these thought sessions more often. The AI course can be great. Um, Another one by Joy. Thanks for stopping by, Joy. That was a great show. Thank you both, Dr. Harvey and Nadia. And we have a couple more here. Let's see, I'm going through the questions here. Okay, there's one more. I think that we have room for maybe one more question, one or two, rapid fire. Do you feel that people in North America are not educated enough to know when to go to urgent care versus emergency?
Yeah, that's a hard question. Here's the deal: for medical, legals, and ethical reasons, we want I rather people show up at the ER instead of self-diagnosing in the sense that
Mhm.
a woman with jaw pain or a woman with left shoulder pain at 2 in the morning can be a heart attack. And that person,
Mhm.
husband or someone else could be like, "Oh, it's just your jaw. Oh, you slept funny, your shoulder hurts." No, that's a heart attack. And I would rather be careful and safe and know that that patient went straight to the ER than trying to go to the wrong location and then time matters and then they end up dying. And so with that said, I'd rather be cautious and let the
Mhm.
healthcare professional be that professional. And then they can always say, you know what, this is not an emergency. Go to the urgent care. And, maybe it's your time, but at least it's not your life.
I see. Thank you. A long one here. Healthcare professionals that have been thought to empower their consultations with emotional intelligence have critiqued the physical barriers between doctors and their patients, such as a desk or a screen. You made suggestions that these skills in EI might be improved with future AI consultant live assistance.
Oh, I love it. I'm glad you watched one of my classes. So yeah, I do a big talk on why not use EI. I mean, why not use AI to teach EI? And so why
Mhm.
not? Unfortunately, I know we only have like a minute left, but I know doctors in general, we're so busy diagnosing, we're so into the weeds that some doctors aren't trained with empathy, how to talk to a patient, sit down
Mhm.
with the patient, be empathetic. Why not have ChatGPT teach you what words to use, what to say, what are the top things that doctors do wrong, and then even role play with the AI, and then go back and forth and have critique. You can do all that now, and it's not breaking HIPAA, it's not doing anything. It's actually helping our doctors.
That's awesome. Martin, thanks for stopping by. Thank you for great insight presented in an enjoyable way. Thank you for stopping by, Martin. Thank you, all the audience who took time to be with us live. This is the fastest hour I've had in a long time. And For the audience, we may need to do these more often, Dr. Harvey.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I'm gonna do a selfless plug-in for Jordan Wilson tomorrow at Everyday AI. I'm gonna be on
Yes.
there at 7:30 in the morning Central Time. So please come join us and
Hmm.
come to our page, and you'll see there's a tag there, and you can join us tomorrow. So
Absolutely.
it'll be
That's
different from today, way different, because his angle is a different way of doing things. So it'll be
that's
fun.
awesome. Yes. So join us. Join Jordan and Dr. Harvey tomorrow at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. And thank you so much for your time, Dr. Harvey. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the audience for being with us live. If you're watching this recording on the recorded session, you can put in your questions in the comments and follow us and reach out to us if you have any questions. And with that, I appreciate your time and we'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.